Hello and welcome to Train Shed Tuesday. Not a lot to cover this week. Been busy with real life. Been having spent a few days away, which is quite nice, but we did a lot of shopping for stuff for the build, which has taken a lot of time. It cost a lot of money. And I've been doing other jobs to do with the build, so I've not had a lot of time to do model railways. Even when you're retired, the real world does tend to kick in a bit. But I've done a few things. So I did make this up, which is the lovely little Pico station. They're great kits. You've got a choice of where you put that, and that was originally going to go here as the station building. Compared to what I was going to use, which was the big German one, but I felt that was a bit too big. However, this one I think is a bit too small. Now what I also did, because while we were away we were at Guildford, so I could go into Kestrel models, I got one of these, which is the Kestrel Station Master's House. Now these are quite nice kits. That was a grand total of £9.50. Now they're a bit bland if you make them like the kit, and I've only ever seen photos of them made unpainted. However, if you paint them up and you pick out all the stonework and do the little bits over the door and everything, they make up quite nicely. And it did occur to me that that might make quite a nice station building. So I've begun to make out of cardboard a canopy that will sit there along the platform. Now the good thing with these kits is they use standard sprues, so you get more doors and windows than you need. So if I put some more doors and windows in there, although actually you won't see them when it's on the layout, that will give me quite a nice little station building. So this area is coming along quite well. I've also begun to fix the track down. Quite a lot of people ask, what do I use? Very cheap super glue is the answer, and clamps. And that fixes it down really well, in fact. So I've got a little bit of that done. I've also made a decision over here, which is that I don't want this as a cutting. It makes doing the road in the other village a bit contrived. So what I think I will do, I'd like to use this bridge, and I don't have another straight bit of track. So I'll probably put a tunnel mouth in here that kind of leads to a cutting and another bridge, but gives me the whole of this area. Because what I want to do is put several different layers on here. Those that know my style know I like the railway to be in the landscape, not on the landscape. So although obviously you'll have a hill here, it'll be quite nice to have other raised areas on this area. I think I mentioned last time I have tried putting a straight in, but it hasn't improved the running on that point that way round. The rest is still a little bit not much done. Few people have commented on the clutter, which I have covered quite a bit over the years. I'm not a very tidy person, and trying to be a tidy person or pretend doesn't really help me, because I'm not. And also I'm quite creative, and I find having stuff lying around is kind of how I create. I put buildings down, I move them around. It's a bit of a storage system. I know it's not everybody's way of doing it, but it's my way, and it's pretty much works for me. So I'm still really keen on this layout, but it is going to be a real long-term build. There's a lot of scenery to do. This little loco, of course, is the guilty party that got me back into N. So I saw an old-fashioned advert in Continental Modeler, however many years ago, 5-6 years ago, just to prove that traditional advertising can work, although I'm a big fan of more modern methods. Anyway, this at the time was about 50 odd quid. Oh, bear with me a second. I hadn't noticed that the loco had derailed, run round the train and run into the back of the wagons. So there you go. So let's go back to this little chap. So I bought this. Now I bought this from Plaza Japan. It duly arrived. I had to pay my £15 import duty and postage charge. So when people say to me, Japan's fine as long as you spend below 120 quid, no it's not. I know some people are okay and some aren't. I bought this, I've made 2 purchases from Plaza Japan and been charged import and postage twice. However, it still made it a very cheap loco. And they're wonderful runners. And that really is then what got me back into it. And I built a little oval layout for it, and then I began to experiment, and then I got the tram, which was another great runner, and that pointed me in the direction of Kato Japanese stuff, which was cheap and reliable, and you end up with this. But that little loco is what started it all. I also have, I'll just leave that running for a second and see if I can find the other one. I also have the very smart black loco with the blue and white coaches. Bit of a story behind that. Actually, that was bought second hand, very cheaply. It was never a very good runner. Eventually one day I took the coach body off and had a look at the motor, and of course it was one of the older Kato motors, not the newer ones. Having said that, the green one is, but it runs fine. However, it was a relatively cheap and inexpensive solution at the time. The better 11-109 chassis were about £22. Oh, sorry, it's not 11109 with these, I beg your pardon. It's the one with the handrails at the end. I can't remember the number. Anyway, they were even cheaper than the 11109. I think I paid about £22 for it. And it simply clips in. So I ended up in the end with a very nice running loco. So I've got two of those. And that one in particular is going to look nice around the sort of mountain scene. I've also been tinkering. The other night, I took this out last night, and I was shunting on this quite a bit. It's still one of my favourites. I love the simplicity of it. I love the look of it. And as somebody said to me a few years ago, quite rightly, do I only build or do I ever run? And the reality is I spend a lot of time building, which I like, but I need to remember sometimes to run trains as well. And I do like shunting. And Matthew printed me some laminated photo cards of these wagons for the exhibition, which was really good. So I've got everything I need. It's got a built-in controller. You just plug the power in, put the fiddle yard on, give the track a bit of a clean, and you're ready to play trains. It's quite stressful at the moment in lots of ways, and I've mentioned before that I find model railways and shunting in particular very therapeutic. You just lose yourself in shunting for a while, concentrate on that, and I find that great. I particularly like the station on this. That's all just strips of cardboard and a Gauge Master Kestrel shed painted up. So at the moment I've got my German one of these locos, and quite appropriate because I've got a German truck and a German goods shed. So Kato with these did pretty much what Lima used to do with the freelance shunters, which you could get these in two different German liveries, I believe an Austrian livery, a UK livery, all of which I've got. It does make them a bit more expensive, which just shows what a bit of trademarking does for you. So they're £10 more just because it's got a sticker on the side. Be very careful of these at the moment. The UK one was buyable for about £40. There are people listing them on eBay at £65. There are retailers trying to get £55 for them, which I think is really naughty. There are still a few of the freelance ones with wagons kicking around the £35-40 mark. At the moment, these don't seem to be available in any form very easily in the UK. I'm sure they'll come back round again. That's obviously why they were cheap a while back. That's why I bought a couple while they were cheap. Hopefully they will come back in again. They're some of the smoothest, nicest running locos I own, and they're the cheapest N-gauge ones, so they're quite something. So I will be sitting a bit later and doing a bit more shunting on that because I rather like it. So like I say, not a lot to discuss at the moment. So it won't be the world's longest tutorial Tuesday. Sorry there's not been many other videos, but as I say, quite a lot going on in the real world, and model railways do tend to take a back seat. I'm going to rush off now and put that loco back together in the wagons so that I can run that. And I'll talk to you again probably next week. Thank you as always for watching.